Hey, welcome back to The Dive. When New York and the state actually become number one in terms of being open and well-governed, doing the right things about cannabis, it's going to put a ton of reality into the global situation and the US situation, is only one of the few noteworthy statements made by our guest. He'll talk about the current state of the cannabis industry, its legalization, why he stepped down from Gage, termination of a merger, and a potential tech project he's working on. He is best known as the founder of Canopy Growth Corp, former chairman of Gage Growth Corp, and is involved with numerous Canadian small cap companies. The one and only Bruce Linton. But before we bring Bruce on, consider hitting that subscribe button for me, please. Hey, Bruce, welcome back to The Dive.
Good to be here.
Okay, so it's so great to have you. Let's start with this. You said in one of your recent interviews that if federal legalization is delayed much longer, there might be a ripple effect in the cannabis industry. Could we get some color on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw Ben make a comment at GTI, I think it might have been last week, where he said his business, I'm paraphrasing, but does not depend on federal legalization. In fact, just even a little bit regulation better now, maybe access to banking or stock exchange would probably be better than immediate open federal. And so I think it's going to see a bunch more states keep turning over, a bunch more operators state by state. Like how happy or excited are people about New York maybe happening now, right? Old governor out, new acting governor in, all of a sudden, you know what, game on. And so you're going to I think without the federal, it's going to keep putting the spotlight on those actors in the states that are actually pretty relevant.
Makes sense. Okay, so you recently stepped down as chairman with Gage Growth Corp after the company was acquired by TerrAscend. Do you view this as a successful handing over of the baton?
Yeah, so I when the deal closes, which could be 90 days out or whatever, then I get to step down. So the reason I think it's a good deal is if you look at Gage, great company in a great state, but it's operating in a single state. So each time we grew, our revenues go up, our stepping towards profitability, our high margins. We weren't trading as a great trade because people perceived risk, real or not, that you're in one state. So terrific. Michigan's going fantastic. What if Michigan doesn't go fantastic? I'm going to pay a lot less for your stock was the reaction. So we're seeing this great growth, but not great growth in share price. Now, if you take our revenues and our forecasted revenues and you plug those into TerrAscend and you get full value, ooh, that looks a lot better. Now, if you take our skill set and match it with theirs, which is really on how to create great product and have great brands and push the product out, and theirs has been capital markets, right? We're sitting on, call it 30 million, and they're sitting on 270 million-ish in cash. So now you start putting revenues and EBITDA together, get synergies, increase profitability, trade at a multi-state operator value. You take our skill set with their skill set. We don't have to go raise capital, don't dilute people, and you're off to the races. So to me, it just seemed like a way to look for a triple in valuation with less risk.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's go back and talk a little bit more about New York. If the recently appointed Kathy Hochul could legalize recreational cannabis, how do you expect the state to play out for the entire U.S. cannabis market?
Well, you think about it. Was it March they announced that we're doing it, and they under Como did zero. And when I say zero, they didn't even select who are the members of the authority that is going to govern this. Which person's in charge? So they had made an announcement, and then there's a bit of a gap between an announcement and actually doing it, which are the people put in place to do it. And so that seems to be back on the focus. And as it does, it's going to be weird because you'll have people like in Massachusetts whose big bet has been, I'm going to have my licenses close to the New York border because they'll never have cannabis, New Jersey, et cetera. So I think those bets might get a little less good. New York is the focus point. There is no national media from any country in the world that doesn't have a representative coverage group in New York. So I think it's going to start getting picked up. The US is doing this. So it'll not only knock on other US states, but I think it's going to knock on bringing back the conversation so that we quit having a discussion constantly about COVID and whether there's a vaccine mandate or, today France laid off 3,000 or 4,000 people who work in healthcare because they didn't have vaccines. What we're going to have is conversations about cannabis again. and cannabis policy. And it's because New York is going to be the central actor in moving in a new way, in a clear, and I think a very well thought out way. This is a big deal.
Interesting. And the cannabis industry has been under pressure in 2021, with most of the major names flat or down substantially year to date. What do you think could cause a turnaround?
Well, these things go up so much and then flat and then up again. So I think what starts to come around is as New York goes live, the topic gets hot again. Maybe we see, maybe they don't get a federal program in, but they start to let states' rights come through. So you start to see banking as a discussion. Because really, it's still it's an unstated issue, but the banking and access to capital markets, the reason they're all listed in Canada is because they can't list in the US. How much would these stocks be worth if all of a sudden they could start trading on NASDAQ? So
Yeah, no
there's
kidding.
going to be things like that. On the medical side, I think we're going to start to see some of these trials reading out data. And when they start to say that, in fact, this dosage in this way really does help you with anxiety, or this dosage in this way really does actually improve this quality of sleep. So we start to actually get into the domain of truly intellectual property created through trials that starts to give even more validity to the medical. I think that will be maybe the second war.
Okay, so let's talk about another name you're involved with, Redlight Holland. The company decided to cancel its merger with Crezo Pharma. What happened here?
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because I've been an advisor to both of them. So I'm the advisor to Crezo for a bunch of things because I love their animal care products. I think their Swiss research has been amazing. And I've been an advisor with Redlight because I think there's going to be a brand hatched, created, and globalized that represents the evolution of people having choices. And it could stay with truffles, but I think it could go bigger. And so they thought about getting together. And my belief firmly is they probably would have married and lived happily ever after if they could have gone on a date face to face. And what I mean by that, with COVID, all of this activity, how's your company work and what's it about? What's your cash flow? All that stuff was done on Zoom, done on emails. And there was never a chance where the 4 or 5 key actors could sit down, truly iterate through, why do you spend this much this way? What are we going to do that? Because I likened it to people that are pretty sure they want to get married. And as they get close to the altar, they realize one person spends very differently than the other. And they start having a lot of discussions about money and how much do you have and how do you spend it? And that just creates tension on other minor things. So I think it's better they went their own way. Now they each have a number of prospects ahead that they should pull the trigger on and become the bigger company they were going to be together, just become it on their own. And I'm pretty upbeat that Todd at Redlight and Adam at Crezo, they've got enough things to work on that they should be able to make these things grow.
So the company also announced its 51% acquisition of Acadian Exotic Mushrooms Limited.
Yeah.
It caught our eye, and from quick glance, it appears they make conventional mushrooms. What is the strategy with this acquisition?
Well, so there's a number of them that have come together. You referenced that one. 2 or 3 things. One is these are real businesses generating very high margin products. And that the platform they use would be eligible to make, when we can and will, make other mushrooms, which are less necessarily good with a steak, but just generally really good. They have expertise in growing. Further, we can take the skill set that they have here at large scale and perfected and take them and say, how can you help us in Holland where we're growing? And so you get revenue, you get platform, and you get expertise.
Very cool. Okay, so we've got one more question for you. We know you have a history of working in tech. Are there any projects you're working on that we can ask you about?
Yeah, so tech has to have a purpose, right? You can have a lot of people who invent things and they're like a hammer running around looking for a nail. Instead, I like themes. And so the tech I'm really big on right now, and we just finished an acquisition yesterday, we'll merge 2 companies together that are what I would call ESG. How do we save the planet? And one of the ways you do that is you quit buying everything and you share things. And you say, well, why would I share stuff with you? Well, you're a nice person. That's okay. But I might share it because I own one and I'm not using it. I'll rent it to you cheaper or more available than a rental house. Think of a paddleboard. Think of a life jacket. Think of any gardening equipment. And so the original company was called Ruckify. The other one, I can't announce the name because we haven't put the public release out, but we're putting 2 together. One of them is already profitable on a peer-to-peer marketplace, sharing things. And so I expect that my goal is that yet this week, we'll clean up and have our listing figured out. And before the middle of November, these combined entities will be listed. We have all the financials for the 2 prior years. We have up until the end of June already done on a review basis. So we're ready to go. And the software is really there so that we can share things and monetize the things we have. And the effect of that is we make less, which means we don't destroy the planet quite at the current rate.
Yeah, sounds great. Do you still have your chair that you rented last time from Ruckify?
There it is. People
There
think
it
I'm a
is.
gamer. I'm just super cheap. It's a great chair. The only problem is I've been in it so much. One arm has seemed to get a little bit broken and lower than the other. So I'm thinking I may end up having to buy the chair because I've been having it for a long time. But yeah, you think about all the stuff around us, and you know, maybe you're in an urban environment where you don't have storage, so it's such a pain to store. Yet you still want to have experiences. I don't care if it's out, you know, on the water in the wilderness, or you want to create things in your home, whether it's crafting to food. There's so many pieces of gear and equipment that you want to use, but I don't want to store. Like this summer, I've used kayaks a few times through Ruckify. You know, it's great. Use them and not have to store them.
And do you have to clean them still?
You have the request, but not the requirement. So I wash them off when I take them back, drop it, done.
Awesome.
That's like $40 for the day.
So good. Seems like a great option. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show again, Bruce.
No problem. Thank you. Be well.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow. But in the meantime, why don't you check out one of those videos?